Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Let's try that again. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Thank you. It is a pleasure to be back with you. It seems like it was forever. And I really hoped that I wasn't going to have a commute story to start the lesson off with, but wow. It was nice and dry when I left home. Then I hit West Chicago Road and the sky opened and it came down in buckets. And I remembered that one back in January when we had so much ice and snow, and I thought, yeah, but no matter how hard it rains, we're not going to have to shovel it when it's done. And here I am. I am delighted to be with you again, though I will admit that I am slightly bummed that it is not Friendship Sunday or Prayer Sunday or Birthday Sunday. Since my birthday is the end of this month, I was looking forward to being sung to. The cat just hasn't mastered that yet, so I guess I will be out of luck. Or I could join in and listen, and that would be okay too. This, I don't want to call it a lesson, and I'm going to turn on the light if that's not going to mess up our image. It's not messing up our image. No, it's good, terrific. And this is not between the top of my nose and the bottom of my chin. Yay! I have to tell you that I found the opening sentence, which I'm about to read to you, in an article in the New York Times magazine. I think it was last autumn. It was called The Climate Change Issue. And the entire issue was donated to climate change. When I read this, and this is by a man named David Wallace Wells, W-E-L-L-S. I don't Google people, so I don't know who this man is, but I was so taken by this statement. Quote, "You can never really see the future, only imagine it. And then try to make sense of the new world when it arrives." I'm going to read that again. You can never really see the future. We can't, can we? No. I mean, any one of us could be gone in the next 10 seconds, and then we don't have a future. And we can only imagine it, and then try to make sense. That was the phrase that really grabbed me. And then try to make sense of the new world when it arrives. Well, if you've watched any of the news or read any of the streams on your phones or opened any books or newspapers, you know that what the world is in a state of, may I use the word chaos, uncertainty. They're talking about the fact that children have missed the social skills of being together in school. The Dr. Vivek Gurumurthy got on television the other night and said that loneliness is now a number one public health issue. And I thought, what have we missed? What have we missed? And then I reread this. You can never really see the future. We could not have seen the future. I remember when my younger son, as opposed to my older son, said, "Mom, can I come and stay with you for about 6 weeks? We're supposed to shelter in place at the beginning of COVID." Okay, that 6 weeks went on for a really, really long time. And eventually he did leave, but COVID didn't leave. It's only last week that it was announced that it was no longer in pandemic status. And I look at people today, two faces that I knew from my library book club no longer come. Even on Zoom, I have a second Zoom book club. One of the people rarely shows up. And I haven't taken my car in for an oil change because I drive so little by going nowhere that it isn't necessary. The simple fact is our lives have altered significantly, and we did not imagine this future. But it has come upon us, and what we imagined it would be different isn't. So what do? We try and make sense of the new world. And I put capital letters on new and world. The new world, when it arrives, and it arrives, friends, every single day. Every single day when we wake up in the morning, and I don't know about you, when I wake up in the morning and the first thing I reach for is the cat. Okay, the little kitty's right there next to mommy, snuggled up. That's good. And then I open my eyes, look at the ceiling, and see the light and go, woohoo! I'm here for another day. Yippee. And then the day starts. How you start your day, and I've talked about this a lot, how you start your day sets a pattern for its unfolding. Now, we recently had a class on Zoom in which we talked about prophets in Scripture. Prophecy, my friends, is not telling the future. It is telling us the relationship between cause and effect. If you do A, you will get this set of consequences. If you do B, you will get a different set of consequences. So when you open your eyes in the morning, what's the first thing you do? Many, many years ago, I knew someone whose first word upon awakening in the morning, I should be polite here, was an expletive. Not a good way to start, friends. Not a good way to start at all. We know what you think is what you get. So as I began to think about what I wanted to converse with you this morning, and I wish that we were in a situation where I could pass the microphone around and we'd have a way to zoom in with the people outside, but we can't. So it's going to sound a bit like a monologue instead of a dialogue, but I invite you to participate in an inner dialogue as you hear me speak. I thought, if we're going to make sense of the world when it arrives, what powers do we need to use? Well, immediately the first one came to me was faith. The second one was imagination. The third one was will. And then I started looking for my copy, my old, very old copy of Mr. Fillmore's The Revealing Word, and I couldn't find it. That's probably because it's in one of the piles. You know, I have piles of books and papers, and I couldn't put my paw on it immediately, so I thought, well, I'll just make up meanings for those words. The first one was faith, and immediately leapt to my mind the statement, the vision of things hoped for. The vision of things hoped for. Several key words in that sentence. Vision, because we also know that Scripture has told us where there is no vision, the people perish. So the first word is vision of things. Things. Does that mean, glasses of water? Does it mean pieces of paper? No, it means outcome. It means effects. It means what happens when we take action in our mind and with our bodies. If you think A, and then you exercise that, and bring something forth, those are the things hoped for. And hope, hoped for. Because, my dear friends, as we all know, from trying moments in our lives, without hope, nothing happens. If we do not have hope of an outcome, what's the point? I've always said you might as well sit down in the middle of the kitchen floor and have a really good cry, and then get on with it. So this faith, this vision of things hoped for. And amazingly this morning, I was poking around under here, and I went, oh, they have a paperback edition of The Revealing Word and it says, YOU teaching area, please do not remove. And I thought, well, thank you, God. So I looked up faith, and I found it. The quickest one is the perceiving power of the mind linked with the power to shape substance. And I thought, bingo. That's all we need. What you think is what you get. So as we shape this new world in which we live, what we think is what we get. The second word, or the second power that I thought of, was imagination. I'm not sure what Mr. Fillmore said about imagination, but I know my favorite definition of imagination is the pinking shears of the mind. Now, the guys might not remember this, but ladies all remember we had a pair of pinking shears, didn't we? And when you cut it out with pinking shears, it looked so pretty around the edges. So I like to think of imagination as the pinking shears of the mind, coupled with the faculty of faith. In other words, I'm believing as I'm imagining, creating the image, projecting it. You know, Julie's song this morning was so fantastic that I was feeling just a little wanting to be really snarky and say, okay, that was the lesson, folks. We got it in all the stanzas. We're done. Let's go down to the kitchen and make coffee. Because everything that the lyrics in that song says is the foundation of Unity's interpretation of New Thought. I can do anything. I can do anything, I can do anything, I can do anything. If we believe in the intrinsic goodness and power of ourselves. And last week I was so fortunate that during my Wednesday class, which is on Zoom at 11 o'clock on Wednesdays, one of the students commented, and I'm not going to identify the person because I haven't asked permission. The person said, I kept saying, we have to realize that we are good, that we are good, we are good. And the person said, yeah, but forever people have been telling us we're not. And I thought, that person nailed it. What were we told from the beginning? Right after we ate that apple, what do we get? Not good, kiddies. And there's going to be consequences. I am so happy that Matthew Fox, instead of calling it original sin, has called it original blessing. Because that little bit of snarkiness on our part, in that moment of our creation, of our doing something, reaching out, grasping something, experiencing it, and then living with the consequences, is the empowerment that we have to be in this world and to create it. If we hadn't done that, folks, just think, we'd have been stuck in Eden forever. And it might have been pretty boring after a while. Have we ever considered that? How many apples can you eat? And how many times can you look at the animals? And how many names can you think of for the vegetables, etc., etc.? That ejection of us from the Garden of Eden into the matrix of the world in which we live, in which we create our world every day, was the most empowering aspect of our lives. God said, I made you in my image and likeness. You are power. And you are my power. And you have the power to create. So first we have the foundation of faith. Then we have this wonderful pinking shears of the mind that we call imagination. And the third power, capacity, attribute that I'd like to speak of is will. Oh, I should tell you what Mr. Fillmore called imagination. I don't think it was as exciting as mind. Hang on. Imagination. The faculty of the mind that images and forms. No, I like pinking shears of the mind much better. I really do. And then he defines will And it says, very simply, will. The will is the executive faculty of the mind, the determining factor in man and woman. And I thought, that's good, but I got a better one. Will is what gets us out of bed in the morning. Yeah, and I don't just mean because we have a full bladder. It gets us out of bed in the morning, friends, because we are designed to be expressive agents in our world. That's what we're here for. That's what we're here for, beyond our imagining. So we imagine, and then we go even further. We go further. Will is, I say, what gets us out of bed in the morning is we think of what we have to do. What am I going to do today? Okay, it could be pretty prosaic, as in, I really have to clean out the refrigerator. Or I need to take the car down to the mechanic and have the oil changed. Or I have to take the cat to the vet. Or, in other words, have I said anything that was outstanding and stupendous? I wasn't speaking of Mr. Edison, who developed the light bulb, or Mr. Einstein, who did not get EMC squared on the first try, folks. Neither did Mr. Edison. It took him 5,000 tries. But each of them got out of bed, got up every morning, and gave it their best shot. That's what we are empowered to do. You can do anything you put your mind to. The problem is we are limited, and I hate to use that word, we are limited by our self-imposed limitations. And where do those self-imposed limitations come from? They come, I am sorry to say, from the erroneous messages that have been offered to us by people who meant well, who wanted to protect us. Like the mom or the dad who says, don't touch that hot stove. Well, that makes sense. But that one made sense, but, well, I don't think you should try that flavor ice cream. Why not? You can always spit it out if you didn't like it the first time. Nobody said you had to eat the whole cone. You can go, yuck, I don't want any more. And just get rid of it. Really? No, because then what is somebody going to say? Well, we paid for it, so you have to finish the whole thing. Do you see how this spirals into, this is what you have to do, instead of, here are your limitless number of options. You don't like that cone? Let's get you another cone. Because if we're not going to buy you another cone, what is that rooted in? It's rooted in the consciousness of lack. We paid for that. We better get our nickel's worth. Not that you can get a cone for a nickel anymore, but some of us remember when you could get a cone for a nickel. Yep. We were small, very small, but we could. So these powers which we have are the keys to our expression of this world. It smacks us in the face every morning. As soon as you get up, you're going to hit a mirror. If it isn't in the bathroom, it's over the bedroom dresser. Or it's the one in the kitchen or somewhere. You're going to look at yourself in the mirror. What do you say? What do you say to the face in the mirror? I have invited you on occasion to look at it and go, good morning, God. What are we going to do today? Some of you might have found that rather blasphemous, like, oh, who am I to imagine that I might actually be able to do something with God? Well, folks, who else is God going to use? He, she, it, whatever pronoun you want to use, doesn't have a form that can come down to earth. And when compassion is needed, can extend a hand. When a word of encouragement is needed, can open a human mouth and say, my dear friend, I am here for you. God needs us. You know, in the old days, I'd have held up the lightning rod waiting for the lightning to strike, but not anymore. Not anymore, because through Unity's new thought interpretation, I have come to realize that each one of us as an individualized expression of God is exactly that, an individualized expression of God. And since God is infinite, each one is different. And how do I have proof of that? Because the FBI will tell you that there are no two identical sets of fingerprints in the world. So look at them. Wow. I don't know, that one's got an ink spot or something. I don't know, maybe that was the cat, whatever. But there are no two sets alike, which is why crooks and bad people, burn off their fingerprints, because they would immediately be identified. We all watch those cop movies where they say, well, gosh, he doesn't have any fingerprints. Well, duh. He didn't want to be identified. She didn't want to be identified. They didn't want to be identified. And yet our identity, friends, is, I am a beloved child of God. Genesis, and God created humankind in God's image and likeness, with the exception of spirit. God is pure spirit, and you and I are spirit and form together. We put them together, and what you see is what you get. This infinite variety of God in expression. So it is with this that we begin to create by imagining this new world. Well, I thought, okay, that's pretty good, God. I need a story or something. How am I going to illustrate this? And then, when push came to shove, I said, okay, what else do I need to know here? What else can I find that I'm going to be able to use to illustrate this point? And as many of you know, I have a much thumbed set of angel cards, those little kind of finger-sized cards that have a word and a picture of an angel on them. And I went and I thought, just pull out 3 in any sequence. So I went 1, 2, 3. And I wrote them down. And this is what I got. First it said humor. And I thought, okay, God, that was humorous. What am I going to do with that? Second one was play. And I thought, you are going from bad to worse, my dear. And then the third one was adventure. Now that one I could work with, because that to me is a play on the word Advent, a season that we celebrate in preparation for Christmas. And I've always preached on the adventure within. In other words, the exploration of ourselves, so that we celebrate this birth of the teacher who taught us of the Christ consciousness, which is the embodiment of God within us. I thought, now we got somewhere. So then I thought, what if I tell them about the violets? Can everybody see these violets? I'm going to throw them to Betsy, and she wasn't planning on this. I'm just going to give them to you. And would you just kindly pass them? I mean, if you want to take a bite, you can, because they are edible. Wait, get back here, it won't be. Okay, they are edible violets. Sorry, Sean. We'll have no, I'll repeat. So Betsy is passing among you with an envelope of edible violets. Yesterday was the first market, farmer's market in Depot Town in Ypsilanti, where I live. And one of my favorite farmers, this guy is so cool. He's like Jack Kerouac, really. I mean, right out of the 60s. Hair which is longer than mine, longer than yours, and so cool. And I went up to his stand and I said, what have you got? He said, well, it's early in the season, folks. And he said, I got a small bunch of kale and a few other herbs. And I said, what's this stuff? And he said, violets. I said, violets? I said, edible violets? He said, yes. I said, so what are you supposed to do with them? Like sprinkle them on a salad or something? He said, or whatever. And I said, how much are they? I'm thinking, what? Well, he had the small bag for $3, and he had a slightly larger bag for $5. Well, I went for the $3 one. And they're clean, they're healthy, they, kind of taste like grass a little bit, but they're yummy. And I said, okay. So I went home, and for lunch, I put them in a sandwich. I put them between 2 pieces of bread with mayonnaise, mustard, a little prosciutto ham. Thank you very much. And they were delicious. And this morning, I put them into my oatmeal along with raisins. And then I thought, I'm going to blow their minds by taking them to church this morning and passing them out. Because, friends, the point that I want to say is, I've never eaten violets in my life. But if we are to create a new world with the circumstances given to us today, we must be willing to transcend our rules and regulations that say you don't eat violets, you'll eat broccoli and potatoes and things like that. I thought, okay, that's good for humor. That's good for humor. And then the second word was play. Okay, it's time for me to tell you about Sheldon and Charlene. Aren't those cute names? Sheldon and Charlene come to my deck. My house, my front faces east and my back faces west, and I have a line of evergreen trees so close that by the time I leave that house, whenever I do, the branches are probably going to be on top of the deck. Sheldon and Charlene are squirrels. Squirrels. I used to have another squirrel to whom I never gave a name. He came for a little while, and I would just wave at him. Very sadly, he appeared one day with a terrible wound on his back. And I looked and I thought, oh, I need to do something. And then I thought, wait a minute, Linda, there's wisdom and there's discernment as powers. You're not going out on the deck with a tube of Neosporin and saying, okay, hold still, squirrel, while I put some medicine, it'll make you feel better. That's not intelligent. That is neither wise nor discerning. And I'm sorry to say that I am afraid that, and I don't know what the lifespan of a squirrel is, but I am afraid that he has crossed the rainbow bridge with other animals and has gone to his eternal rest. And then Sheldon started to show up. He is a handsome little boy. And Charlene started to show up, and she's a cute little girl. And if you're thinking, how in the world do you know? Because each of them climbed up the screen door, and, I didn't need a PhD in squirrel anatomy to discern what the gender of these little critters was. It was pretty clear. So they come. And I went to this wonderful store in Ann Arbor called By the Pound. It's where you can buy tiny quantities or large quantities of things in bulk. Like if you only need a quarter of a cup of some kind of herb or spice, you can get it. I mean, it's like, it looks like a hole in the wall. It's a terrible mess. It's horribly cluttered. And I love going there, and everybody is wonderful. So I've started buying, and they have roasted salted, unroasted salted, and unroasted unsalted with the label which says, for our furry friends. So I have been buying peanuts and shells, and I put them out. Charlene is quite a bit bolder than Sheldon. In fact, I'm a little concerned because I haven't seen Sheldon for about a week. But the other day, when Charlene came, I opened the glass door, leaving the screen door closed, and I put my finger on the screen way, way down near the edge. And she came up and put her little nose right at my finger. And she probably thought, peanuts! I smell peanuts! So I opened the door, and she backed off. She's very prudent. And I threw 3 out. And she picks one up. And then she runs home. I'm not sure where home is. I lose track of her when she goes into the evergreens. Friends, you may wonder why I take the time to feed squirrels. Why I also take the time to fill up my bird feeder every day. And my son, he profoundly chastised me for this the other day when he came to visit. He said, Mom, your financial situation, you should not be feeding the birds. You're spending too much money on bird food. Now, I'm very frugal. When I go to the Ace Hardware, I always look for the ones that are on sale. And I have started rationing things. They get 2 jars in their feeder every day. So when they're gone, it's gone. But he said to me, why do you do this? And I said, sweetie, because the joy that this interaction with these other creatures that are creatures of God is so satisfying. It makes my life wonderful. And I would suggest to you, friends, that one of the ways we can begin to create the consciousness of peaceful coexistence and peaceful creation is by recognizing the harmony of the universe. It's what we in Unity call divine order. There is a process for everything. Everything has a reason. Everything has a sequence and a consequence, even the ones that we don't like. When a predatory cat gets out of the house and catches a really cute bird, we're upset. If a snake eats a frog, we're upset. I'm not even going to go into the tragedies of human loss. And yet, that's part of the process. And for us to be able to understand our role in creation is to recognize this harmony. And we need this harmony because, friends, when we recognize the harmony, then it opens the heart chakra and the love begins to flow from us. So I have one more story about the birds to tell you. Some of us grew up a long time ago before people had clothes dryers. Ordinary people had clothes dryers. I grew up in upstate New York, and we hung the clothes out in the backyard until they froze on the clothesline, or the snow was so deep you couldn't get to the clothesline. So I like the smell of fresh, air-dried clothes. So I go out on my deck, and I have railing on 3 sides, and I drape things over, and I put hang-up hangers, and I have one of these double hook kind of shepherd thingies, the bird feeders on one, and there's nothing on the other, and sometimes I have a shirt or something. And so I put out the laundry, and I put out the bird food at the same time, and then I look up at the trees and the telephone wires, and I say, okay, you've got your breakfast, and there's my laundry. And remember, no pooping on the laundry. Am I crazy? I don't think so. Am I willing to transcend the rigid rules of this is how a certain woman of a certain age should behave in relationship to squirrels and birds? Yes, I'm willing to transcend that and to find the joy and the relationship in this. Because, friends, the reality is, if we are going to create a new world of peace and love, this is how we do it. Because love is the only true power. So I invite you to go forth today. Maybe stop at the hardware store on your way home. Pick up a small bag of birdseed. Or if you think you got a squirrel, try and find some unsalted, unroasted peanuts. And if you can't, it's okay. But the next time you see a bird flying by, bless it. Bless it in its magnificence. Can you fly in the sky like that? No, but it can. And there is a divine order and a power